I'm Jeff Pospisil, the 10-Minute Treasurer, with practical advice for improving your church's financial future. I'm going to start a series on the art of being cheap. I am a cheap accountant. That's kind of what I naturally do is I find ways to save money. And so I just thought I'd share that with you. And the first one I'm going to work on is on church credit cards. So back in 2003, that's when I first became a church treasurer. And I remember um, deciding to implement church credit cards for the church I served. And that was fairly uncommon at the time. So my pastor and staff, they greatly appreciated it. It made it so they didn't have to go through the reimbursement process, and they did fairly well with it. Um, Fast forward now, and now it is gone from something that they would appreciate to almost becoming an expectation or a right. And I've had a couple of churches that tried to reverse that and take away the credit card. And man, that was a fight. I mean, people howled. Yeah, they believe that it's a right that the church provide them a credit card. Well, that's not a right. They do have a right to be reimbursed for their business expenses, but they do not have a right to incur debt for the church. So, anyway, so I'm going to tell you right now, here's my position is that if I could undo a decision, I would get rid of church credit cards. Even at my own work, conference credit cards, I would undo it. And here's my reasoning why. So one of the things that I think is a given, there's plenty of studies to back this up, that it's you tend to spend more if you are using a credit card versus a debit card or cash. And I think this holds true that also you tend to spend more if you're using somebody else's credit card, a business credit card, or the church's credit card in this case, versus your own credit card. And I think partially it's because there's more work involved for you. So when you spend with the church's credit card, you just got to hold on to a receipt and give that to them. If you spend using your own credit card, you got to hold on to the receipt, uh, and then you got to turn it in and uh, and get go through the reimbursement process and eventually deposit a check. So it's just a little bit more of a hassle. So, but there's also other reasons why I think people tend to overspend. So one of the reasons why I think people overspend is that they tend to focus on the benefits instead of the costs. So, they don't know the cost of, well, if you make a payment late or what the interest rate is, but they'll know the cash back rewards. And the cash back rewards are fine if you're only spending on stuff you would have normally bought anyway. But when you have a tendency to overspend and then justify it because you're getting cash back, well, then you're ending up in the hole if you're spending 20% more just so you can get 1% cash back. So that's one of the kind of the sneaky things about the credit card is that you think, well, I'm getting cash back or I'm getting points or I'm getting miles or something like that. Well, a lot of times that doesn't, I would guess rarely that um, that benefit outweighs the additional spending. So that's the first reason, and that's a great reason. Like if you get rid of church credit cards, you will likely um, cut expenses. But the second reason I think is just as important. If you get rid of church credit cards, you no longer have to track down people to get their receipts. I remember again when I first implemented church credit cards, everybody was excellent at it except for one pastor. And I just remember even writing a strongly worded memo to try to straighten this pastor out. Could they see how important this was? They didn't. So, and the memo straightened them out for a couple of months, and then they'd slip back in their habits, and it was just such a pain. And what I found out, especially in the church world where we're supposed to be so grace-filled and we're supposed to be forgiving, that there's always going to be somebody that will not get their receipts and it will take years off your life. And you know, part of the pain about that is they don't have as much incentive to turn in receipts if they're not getting reimbursed. You have all the incentive to try to collect it, but they don't have as much of an incentive if they're not getting reimbursed. And the last reason is that when it comes to those kind of questionable purchases where they look like they're maybe personal, more on the personal side, it's hard to block those. And so that's why I use this. This is Dikembe Mutombo. who's been in some ads recently. And I grew up, I used to love watching him because he was a tremendous shot blocker. And he'd block an opponent and he'd shake his finger at him and he'd say, "Not in my house." And it was just awesome. So, but when people use a credit card, a church credit card, and they get you the receipt, first of all, you're kind of happy to get the receipt, but then you see something that's questionable, and instead of them asking permission, they're asking for forgiveness. And it's a lot harder to block that because the money's basically, the debt's already incurred. So it's basically spent. We have an obligation on that. So now we got to either try to seek for them to reimburse us, which becomes awkward, especially if it's questionable. But then if they are going to turn something in um, and to be reimbursed, they are asking for permission. So, and then, then they're kind of at our mercy. Hopefully we're benevolent in this, but still it does change that a little bit. And so that is also going to cut down on some of your questionable purchases. So people will have to have a business reason for their purchases because otherwise they will not be reimbursed. So that's my 2 cents. I hope this has helped you. Again, this is ministry of the Finance Office of the Dakotas Conference, as well as of the Dakotas United Methodist Foundation. And I want to stress this again that, the reason we put on these videos and we make them available is because we want to see churches succeed in that great mission of making disciples of Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior, and our belief that we do this better in connection. So, all right, God bless you.